as the Kansas City Chiefs prepared for what many would consider their most significant matchup of the season, a game carrying weight not only for their playoff hopes, but for their standing in a fiercely competitive division. Some of the team's stars took a detour from their rigorous schedule to connect with the Kansas City community in a way that caught everyone off guard. On a crisp Friday night, the bright lights weren't shining on an NFL stadium, but instead on a local high school field, where Mill Valley High School was set to face off against St. James Academy in a much-anticipated contest. The crowd buzzed with the usual energy of a big high school showdown, but there was an extra spark in the air that evening, as word quickly spread that Travis Kelce, the Chiefs' legendary tight end, had arrived. What turned murmurs into a full-on roar, however, was the sight of Kelce walking in hand with none other than his fiancée, global music superstar Taylor Swift, a pairing that drew as much attention as the action on the field itself. Joining the famous couple were two familiar faces from the Chiefs roster, former tight end Blake Bell and former wide receiver Garrett Dieter, lending their own support to the local teams. Without any direct ties to either high school, Kelce's presence alone was enough to elevate the atmosphere, but Swift's attendance pushed the energy into another stratosphere, drawing students, parents, and fans from both sides closer to the sideline to catch a glimpse of the two. Kelce, who grew up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and went on to play college football at the University of Cincinnati alongside his brother Jason Kelce, had no connection to Mill Valley or St. James except for Kansas City's proximity and his growing affinity for the city that had embraced both him and, by extension, his fiancée. Swift used the thunderous applause of sold-out arenas, traded in the stage for the bleachers, blending into the crowd, yet standing out all the same. As kickoff approached, players glanced nervously at the sideline, the weight of celebrity eyes, especially those of future Hall of Famer and a Grammy-winning icon, adding a new kind of pressure or perhaps inspiration to the already charged environment. The game itself took on a cinematic quality, every big play punctuated by cheers not just for touchdowns or tackles, but for the knowledge that somewhere in the stands, Kelce and Swift were watching, reacting, celebrating every moment as if it were Sunday at Arrowhead. Early in the first quarter, St. James Academy broke through with a dazzling touchdown run, the crowd erupting as players pointed excitedly toward the sideline where Kelce, Bell, Dieter, and Swift stood together, clapping and exchanging high fives. For the young athletes, the opportunity to perform in front of NFL veterans and one of the world's most famous singers transformed the game into a memory for the ages. Social media accounts lit up with photos and videos, capturing the surreal scene as fans jostled for vantage points, sharing images of Swift laughing with local parents, Kelce chatting animatedly with coaches, and an entire group posing with awestruck students once the final whistle sounded. Meanwhile, back in the world of professional football, Kelce and the Chiefs were still dealing with the fallout from a tough loss to the Buffalo Bills the previous Sunday. The defeat had snapped their winning streak and left them with a 5-4 record, casting a shadow over what had been an otherwise resilient season. With a bye week providing a brief window for rest and recalibration, the team's focus was quickly shifting toward an all-important AFC West showdown against the division-leading Denver Broncos, led by promising young quarterback Bo Nix. The stakes could not have been higher. Every win or loss from this point forward would shape not only playoff seeding, but potentially the legacy of the Chiefs' current era. Yet, for one night, Kelce allowed himself to step away from the stress of game planning and film study, immersing himself in the pure, unfiltered joy of grassroots football. For Swift, the experience was equally novel, as she soaked up the kind of Midwestern community spirit that has defined Kelce's second home. The couple's appearance at the game drew headlines far beyond Kansas City, sparking conversations on sports talk radio and entertainment shows alike, with some commentators marveling at their willingness to step into such a down-to-earth setting, away from the glitz and glamour of their usual circles. On the field, the impact of their presence was tangible. Players from both Mill Valley and St. James seemed to find an extra gear, diving for passes, breaking tackles, and celebrating every big moment with exuberance. During halftime, a group of students gathered near the sideline, hoping for autographs or maybe a selfie, and Kelce obliged, kneeling to pose for photos while Swift, ever gracious, offered encouraging words and even a few hugs to starstruck fans. The night culminated in a thrilling finish, with Mill Valley mounting a late comeback, but ultimately falling just short as St. James held on for the win. In the aftermath, as players from both teams shook hands and coaches congratulated one another, the true significance of the evening began to sink in. For a handful of high schoolers, the knowledge that they had scored touchdowns or made tackles with Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, Blake Bell, and Garrett Dieter standing just a few feet away was something that would stay with them forever. One local sports account captured the sentiment perfectly, posting, "How many high school players can say they scored a TD in front of hashtag Chiefs T Travis Kelce, plus former Chiefs Blake Bell and Garrett Dieter? And Taylor Swift too?" As news of the night spread, Chiefs fans found a brief respite from the anxiety of the upcoming Broncos game, savoring the connection between their heroes and the community. Subscribe for more stories just like this. With the Chiefs gearing up for their Sunday battle in Denver, the tone within the locker room was one of quiet determination. Mahomes and Kelce, the league's most prolific quarterback-tight end duo, spent extra hours fine-tuning their timing, reviewing film, and searching for any edge that might help them break to the Broncos' defense. Kelce's season had been quietly impressive, his 41 catches, 540 yards, and 3 touchdowns leading the team despite the offense facing more adversity and scrutiny than in years past. The narrative around him was shifting from mere production to legacy, as every game brought new milestones and, potentially, a step closer to yet another Super Bowl run. Across the field, the Broncos were dealing with their own set of challenges. Their last outing, a lackluster performance against the Las Vegas Raiders, had left fans frustrated and the coaching staff scrambling for answers. With the Chiefs coming town, Denver's offense was under the microscope, the pressure mounting with every passing day. The Broncos ranked 18th in offensive DVOA, while the Chiefs' defense sat at 14th, a statistical stalemate that suggested a hard-fought, evenly matched contest. The Broncos, eager to prove that their position atop the division was no fluke, identified 5 key matchups they believed could tip the scales, containing Mahomes' scramblability, limiting Kelce's influence over the middle, exploiting mismatches in the secondary, establishing a steady ground game, and winning the turnover battle. Each film session, each practice rep, and each team meeting was colored by the knowledge that this game could define their season. The rivalry between Kansas City and Denver is one of the league's most storied, built on decades of memorable clashes, last-second heroics, and bitter disappointments. This year, with both teams eyeing the postseason, the stakes felt even higher, the tension palpable not just in the locker rooms, but in living rooms and sports bars across 2 states. In Kansas City, the community was still buzzing about Kelce and Swift's surprise high school appearance, a testament to the bond between the Chiefs and the city they call home. Parents recounted stories of the night. Kids wore their autographed jerseys to school, and local news stations replayed the highlights, blending footage of high school touchdowns with shots of Swift clapping and Kelce grinning. The connection went beyond football, touching on something deeper, a sense of shared pride, of roots that run deeper than wins or losses. As the weekend approached, anticipation for Sunday's game reached a fever pitch. Mahomes and Kelce, now back in full preparation mode, drew on the energy of that Friday night, channeling the joy and enthusiasm of the high schoolers into their own routines. For Swift, the experience became another chapter in her ongoing introduction to the rhythms of life in Kansas City, a reminder of why she and Kelce had chosen to make their relationship so public and so connected to the places that matter most. The Chiefs' coaching staff, aware of the distractions and pressures swirling around the team, leaned into the narrative, encouraging players to remember the reasons they fell in love with football in the first place. In Denver, the Broncos ran through their final walkthroughs, plotting ways to disrupt Mahomes' rhythm and force Kelce off his routes.